Sparkling wine is a wine with significant levels of carbon dioxide in it, making it fizzy. The classic example of a sparkling wine is champagne, which is exclusively produced in the Champagne region of France. Most sparkling wine is white or rosé, but there are examples of red sparkling wines such as the Italian Brachetto, Australian sparkling Shiraz, and Azerbaijani, Pearl of Azerbaijan, made from Madrasa grapes. The sweetness of sparkling wine can range from very dry, brut styles to sweeter, doux varieties. The sparkling quality of sparkling wine comes from its carbon dioxide content and may be the result of natural fermentation, either in a bottle, as with the traditional method, in a large tank designed to withstand the pressures involved, or as a result of simple carbon dioxide injection in some cheaper sparkling wines. In most countries the word champagne is reserved only for the specific type of sparkling wine from the Champagne region of France. The French terms mousseux or crémant are used to refer to sparkling wine not made in the Champagne region, such as Blanquette de Limoux produced in southern France. Sparkling wines are also produced in other regions of France as well as other countries around the world. These sparkling wines are often referred to by the local name a region, such as Espumante from Portugal, Cava from Spain, Franciacorta, Trento DOC, Oltrepopa Visi Metadu Classico and Asti from Italy and Cap Classique from South Africa. Sparkling wine have also been produced in Central and Eastern Europe since the early 19th century. Champagne was further popularized in the region late in the century, when Joseph Torley started production in Hungary using French methods, learned as an apprentice in Reims. Torley has since become one of the largest European producers of sparkling wine. The United States is also a significant producer of sparkling wine today, with producers in numerous states. Recently, production of sparkling wine have started in the United Kingdom again, after a long hiatus since some of the earliest examples of sparkling wine was produced there. History. Effervescence has been observed in wine throughout history and has been noted by ancient Greek and Roman writers, but the cause of this mysterious appearance of bubbles was not understood. Over time it has been attributed to phases of the moon as well as both good and evil spirits. The tendency of still wine from the Champagne region to lightly sparkle was noted in the Middle Ages, but this was considered a wine fault and was disdained in early Champagne winemaking, although it made the pride of other historic sparkling wine production areas like Limoux. Dom Pérignon was originally charged by his superiors at the Abbey of Hautevillers to get rid of the bubbles, since the pressure in the bottles caused many of them to burst in the cellar. Later, when deliberate sparkling wine production increased in the early 18th century, cellar workers would still have to wear a heavy iron mask that resembled a baseball catcher's mask to prevent injury from spontaneously bursting bottles. The disturbance caused by one bottle's disintegration could cause a chain reaction, with it being routine for cellars to lose 20 to 90% of the bottles to instability. The mysterious circumstance surrounding the then unknown process of fermentation and carbonic gas caused some critics to call the sparkling creations the devil's wine. The British were the first to see the tendency of wines from Champagne to sparkle as a desirable trait and tried to understand why it produced bubbles. Wine was often transported to England in wooden wine barrels, where merchant houses would then bottle the wine for sale. During the 17th century, English glass production used coal-fueled ovens and produced stronger, more durable glass bottles than the wood-fired French glass. The English also rediscovered the use of cork stoppers, once used by the Romans but forgotten for centuries after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. During the cold winters of the Champagne region, temperatures would drop so low that the fermentation process was prematurely halted, leaving some residual sugar and dormant yeast. When the wine was shipped to and bottled in England, the fermentation process would restart when the weather warmed and the cork stopped. Wine would begin to build pressure from carbon dioxide gas. When the wine was opened, it would be bubbly. In 1662, the English scientist Christopher Merritt presented a paper detailing how the presence of sugar in a wine led to it eventually sparkling, and that by adding sugar to a wine before bottling it, nearly any wine could be made to sparkle. This is one of the first known accounts of understanding the process of sparkling wine, and even suggests that British merchants were producing sparkling champagne before the French champenois were deliberately making it. Semi-sparkling wine. Fully sparkling wines, such as champagne, are generally sold with 5 to 6 atmospheres of pressure in the bottle. This is nearly twice the pressure found in an automobile tire. European Union regulations define a sparkling wine as any wine with an excess of 3 atmospheres in pressure. These include German Sekt, Spanish Espumoso, Italian Spumante and French Crémant and Mousseux wines. Semi-sparkling wines are defined as those with between 1 and 2.5 atmospheres of pressures and include German Spritzer, Italian Frizzante and French pétillant wines. The amount of pressure in the wine is determined by the amount of sugar added during the tirage stage at the beginning of the secondary fermentation, with more sugar producing increased amount of carbon dioxide gas and thus pressure in the wine. Red sparkling wine. While the majority of sparkling wines are white or rosé, Australia, Italy and Moldova all have a sizable production of red sparkling wines. Of these, Italy have the longest tradition of red sparkling wine, such as Brachetto and semi-sparkling Lambrusco. In Australia, red sparkling wine are often made from the Shiraz grape. Pearl of Azerbaijan is a kind of red sparkling wine made from Madrasa grapes in Azerbaijan. Production. The viticultural and winemaking practices of making sparkling wine have many similarities to the production of still wine, with some noted divergence. At the vineyard, grapes are harvested early when there is still high acid levels. In areas like Australia, winemakers aim to harvest the grapes at 17 to 20 degrees Brix. Unlike still wine production, high sugar levels are not ideal, and grapes destined for sparkling wine production may be harvested at higher yields. Care is taken to avoid tannins and other phenolic compounds, with many premium producers still choosing to harvest by hand rather than risk mechanical harvesting, which may split the berries and encourage maceration between the skins and juice. The press house is often close by the vineyard, to where the grapes can be quickly pressed and separated from the skins. Red wine grapes like Pinot Noir can be used in the production of white sparkling wines because the juice is initially clear and is only later tinted red through exposure to the color pigments in grape skins, while some skin exposure may be desirable in the production of rosé sparkling wines and some Blanc de Noirs. Most sparkling wine producers take extended precautions to limit the amount of skin contact. The primary fermentation of sparkling wine begins like most other wines, though winemakers may choose to use specially cultivated sparkling wine yeasts. The wines may go through malolactic fermentation, though producers wishing to make fruitier, simpler wines will usually forego this step. After fermentation, the base wines are then blended to form a cuvée. While there are examples of varietal sparkling wines, such as Blanc Blanc de Blancache made from 100% Chardonnay. Most sparkling wines are blends of several grape varieties, vineyards and vintages. Producers with wide access to grapes will use wines from several hundred base wines to create a blend that reflect the house style of their non-vintage wine. It is through the initiation of a secondary fermentation that distinguishes sparkling wine production and gives the wine its characteristic bubbles. One of the byproducts of fermentation is the creation of carbon dioxide gas. While this gas is able to be released during the first fermentation, efforts are taken during the second fermentation to retain the gas and have it dissolve into the wine. This creates a high pressure within the wine bottle, and wine producers take care to package the wine in strong glass bottles. When the wine is opened and poured into a glass, the gas is released and the wine becomes sparkling. Secondary fermentation. There are several methods used to carry out this secondary fermentation. The most well-known is the traditional or champagne method, where the base cuvee is bottled with a mixture of sugar and yeast. The introduction of a fresh yeast and food source triggers the fermentation process in the bottle that the wine will eventually be sold in. Through the process of riddling and eventually disgorgement, the dead yeast cells are removed from the wine while still maintaining the dissolved carbon dioxide gas. A dosage mixture of fresh wine and some sugar syrup is used to adjust the sweetness level of the wine after it has been disgorged. In the méthode ancestrale, the disgorgement step is skipped and the wine is sold with the lees still present as sediment in the wine. In the sparkling wine production #transfer method, after the wines have gone through the traditional method including riddling and disgorgement, the bottles are emptied into a large tank where they are then transferred to small and large format wine bottles such as 3-liter Jeroboam and small, split sizes used on airlines. Numerous quality producers worldwide use the traditional method to make the sparkling wines. The charmed method takes place in stainless steel fermentation tanks that are pressurized. The fresh yeast and sugar mixture is added to the wine, which rapidly stimulates fermentation in the pressurized environment. The wine is then cooled, clarified and bottled using a counter-pressure filler. The process of carbon injection, the method used to make soda pop fizzy, does not involve initiating a secondary fermentation but rather injecting carbon dioxide gas directly into the wine. This method produces large bubbles that quickly dissipate and is generally only used in the cheaper sparkling wines. Bubbles. An initial burst of effervescence occurs when the sparkling wine contacts the dry glass on pouring. These bubbles form on imperfections in the glass that facilitate nucleation. Nucleations are needed to stimulate the formation of bubbles because carbon dioxide has to first diffuse from the wine solution before it can rise out of the glass and into the air. A poured glass of sparkling wine will lose its bubbliness and carbon dioxide gas much more quickly than an open bottle alone would. The frothiness or mousse of the sparkler, along with the average size and consistency of the bubbles, can vary depending on the quality of the sparkler and the type of glass used. The average bottle of champagne contains enough carbon dioxide to potentially produce 49 million bubbles. The bubbles initially form at 20 micrometers in diameter and expand as they gain buoyancy and rise to the surface. When they reach the surface, they are approximately 1 millimeter in size. It is speculated that the bubbles in sparkling wine may speed up alcohol intoxication by helping the alcohol to reach the bloodstream faster. A study conducted at the University of Surrey in the United Kingdom gave subjects equal amounts of flat and sparkling champagne which contained the same levels of alcohol. After 5 minutes following consumption, the group that had the sparkling wine had 54 milligrams of alcohol in the blood, while the group that had the same sparkling wine, only flat, had 39 milligrams. Sweetness: the amount of sugar added after the second fermentation and aging varies and will dictate the sweetness level of the sparkling wine. Wines produced within the European Union must include the sweetness level on the wine label. For wines produced outside the EU, the sweetness level is not required, but if it is included on the label, the terms used must conform to EU guidelines. Brut natural or brut.The acute RO, extra brut, brut. French sparkling wine. The most well-known example of sparkling wine is that of Champagne from the Champagne wine region of France. On average, Champagne is responsible for about 8% of worldwide sparkling wine production, with many other regions emulating the Champagne style in both grapes used and production methods, sometimes referred to as the Champagne method. French sparkling wines made according to the Champagne method of fermentation in the bottle, but sometimes use different grape varieties, are known as créments and are governed under their own appellation d'origine contrôlée regulations. Another style of sparkling wine found in France are those made according to the méthode ancestrale, which skips the process of disgorgement and produces wines with slight sweetness and still containing the particles of dead yeast matter in the form of lees in the bottle. The regions of Gaillac, Limoux and Clairette-d'Da are the most well-known producers of méthode ancestrale wines. Champagne is produced at the far extreme of viticultural circumstances, where the grape struggles to ripen in a long drawn-out growing season. Cool climate weather limits the varieties of grape and the types of wine that can be made, but it is in this region that sparkling wine has found its standard bearer. The limestone chalk soil produces grapes that have a certain balance of acidity, extract and richness that is difficult to replicate in other parts of the world. The Champenois vigorously defend use of the term champagne to relate the specific wine produced in the Champagne wine region. This includes objection to the term Champagne style to refer to sparkling wines produced outside the Champagne region. Since 1985, use of the term méthode champenoise has been banned in all wines produced or sold in the European Union. Blending is the hallmark of Champagne wine, with most champagnes being the assembled product of several vineyards and vintages. In Champagne there are over 19,000 vineyard owners, only 5,000 of which are owned by Champagne producers. The rest sell the grapes to the various Champagne houses, negociants and cooperatives. The grapes, most commonly Chardonnay, Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier, are used to make several base wines that are assembled together to make Champagne. Each grape adds its own unique imprint to the result. Chardonnay is prized for its finesse and aging ability. Pinot Noir adds body and fruit, while Pinot Meunier contributes substantially to the aroma, adding fruit and floral notes. The majority of champagnes produced are non-vintage blends. Vintage champagne, often a house's most prestigious and expensive wine, is also produced, but only in years when the producers feel that the grapes have the complexity and richness to warrant it. Crémant sparkling wines, designated crémant, were originally named because the lower carbon dioxide pressures were thought to give them a creamy, rather than fizzy mouthfeel. Though they may have full pressures today, they are still produced using the traditional method and have to fulfill strict production criteria. In France, there are 8 appellations for sparkling wine which include the designation crémant in the name: Crémant d'Alsace, Crémant de Bordeaux, Crémant de Bourgogne, Crémant de Die, Crémant du Jura, Crémant de Limoux, Crémant de Loire, Crémant de Savoie. There is also a Crémant designation outside France, Crémant de Luxembourg. French appellation laws dictate that a Crémant must be harvested by hand with yields not exceeding a set amount for their AOC. The wines must also be aged for a minimum of 1 year. The Loire Valley is France's largest producer of sparkling wines outside of the Champagne region. The majority of these Crémant de Loire are produced around the city of Saumur and are a blend of the Chardonnay, Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc. AOC laws do allow CUVE acuities with Sauvignon Blanc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Pinot Noir, Gamay Cot, Pinot d'Ornis and Grelot, but those grapes are rarely used in a significant amount. In Burgundy, AOC laws require that Crémant de Bourgogne be composed of at least 30% Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Blanc or Pinot Gris. Allégret is often used to fill out the remaining parts of the blend. The Languedoc wine Crémant de Limoux is produced in the 41 villages around the village of Limoux in the south of France. The wine is composed primarily of the indigenous grape Mauzac with some Chenin Blanc and Chardonnay. The wine must spend a minimum of 9 months aging on its lees. The sparkling Blanquette de Limoux is composed predominantly of Mauzac and is aged for 9 months. As noted above, the designation Crémant was previously used for sparkling wines from the Champagne region which were produced with slightly less carbon dioxide and somewhat lower bottle pressure. These wines were rare in comparison to regular, full-pressure champagne. A Crémant designation was also used for sparkling wines from the Loire Valley, in the form of Crémant de Saumur and Crémant de Vouvray, without being defined as separate appellations. In 1975, Crémant de Loire was given formal recognition as an AOC, and was followed by Crémant de Bourgogne and Crémant d'Alsace. When in the late 1980s lobbying by champagne producers led to Méthode Champenoise being forbidden within the European Union as a designation for the traditional method, the term Crémant was given its present definition. This meant that the use of Crémant in the Champagne region was discontinued and additional French Crémant AOCs were created from 1990, starting with Bordeaux and Limoux. Since the designation Crémant is not reserved exclusively for French use, it may also be used by producers in other EU countries which fulfill the production criteria, although such usage is rare. For example, in Luxembourg, Crémant de Luxembourg is a designation within the Moselle Luxembourgeoise appellation, rather than a separate appellation, but otherwise follow the same rules as French Crémant. Other French sparkling wine. There are also some other French appellations for sparkling wines, which do not carry the name Crémant. Some of these are exclusively sparkling wine appellations, and some are appellations allowing both still and sparkling wine to be made. The term mousseux is French for sparkling, and can refer to a sparkling wine made using methods other than the méthode champenoise such as the Charmard method, while Crémant can only be used for wines that have been made using the méthode champenoise. Sparkling only are Anjou Mousseux AOC, Blanquette de Limoux AOC, Blanquette Méthode Ancestrale AOC, Bourgogne Mousseux AOC, Clairette de Die AOC, Saumur Mousseux AOC, Touraine Mousseux AOC. Either still a sparkling are Gaillac AOC, Saint-Péry AOC, Vouvray AOC, Montlouise AOC.